23 people died when the skyscraper collapsed, but investigators later discovered something disturbing. Someone had been warned years before it happened. The skyscraper was supposed to transform the city skyline. 25 floors, luxury apartments, office space, retail stores. The project quickly became one of the most ambitious developments in the region. Investors poured millions into construction. Local officials celebrated the project. Newspapers called it a symbol of progress. Everything appeared to be moving forward exactly as planned. Then an engineer noticed something troubling. During a routine review of foundation data, several measurements failed to match expected results. The differences were small, almost invisible, but enough to raise concern. He documented everything and submitted a report that would later become one of the most important documents in the entire investigation. The engineer was not inexperienced. He had spent years reviewing large construction projects. Colleagues described him as cautious, methodical, and difficult to alarm. When he raised concerns, people usually listened. According to internal records, he believed additional foundation testing was necessary. Several soil stability readings appeared inconsistent. Load calculations required verification. Construction should slow until more data became available. The recommendation was straightforward. Pause expansion. Conduct additional testing. Verify structural assumptions. Management acknowledged receiving the report. Construction continued anyway. Months later, the project moved ahead at full speed. Concrete poured. Steel rose. New floors appeared almost every week. The warning report gradually disappeared from discussions. Investors expected results. Deadlines approached. Costs increased. Delays became difficult to justify. Years later, investigators would discover something unusual. References to the engineer's report appeared throughout project records. Meeting notes mentioned it. Emails discussed it. Internal reviews referenced it. Yet the original report itself could not be found. The building opened to the public. Residents moved in. Businesses signed leases. The skyscraper quickly became part of the city skyline. For a while, everything appeared normal. Then small problems began appearing. Hairline cracks, unexpected settling, minor structural complaints. Nothing dramatic, nothing that immediately suggested danger. Maintenance teams documented the issues. Engineers reviewed the findings. And once again, the concerns were considered manageable. The building remained open. Life continued. But investigators would later discover that the warning signs had already begun. Several years after opening, new inspections revealed additional concerns. Certain structural elements showed movement beyond expected limits. Sensors recorded unusual shifts. Engineers requested further analysis. Reports were submitted. Recommendations were made. But shutting down a fully occupied skyscraper would have created enormous consequences. Financial losses, legal disputes, public attention. Once again, the safest decision was also the most expensive one. And once again, action was delayed. Several years after opening, residents began reporting unusual problems. Doors no longer closed properly. Windows cracked without explanation. New fractures appeared inside walls and ceilings. Most complaints were dismissed as normal settling. Large buildings shift over time. Minor cracks happen. Repairs were performed. Maintenance reports were filed. Life continued. But hidden inside engineering records, investigators would later discover something troubling. Many of the reported issues appeared in the exact same section of the building. The same section identified years earlier inside the missing foundation report. The same area, the same concern, the same warning. Engineers were sent to inspect the building. Additional measurements were taken. Structural monitoring equipment was installed. The results were not reassuring. Several support elements showed movement beyond expected limits. Load distribution appeared uneven. Some measurements contradicted the original construction assumptions. Further testing was recommended. A detailed review was requested. Yet no evacuation order was issued. The building remained occupied. Hundreds of people continued living and working inside. Years later, investigators would ask the same question: why did nobody act? Months before the collapse, another report appeared. Unlike the original foundation warning, this report focused on structural movement. The findings were serious. Engineers recommended immediate intervention. Certain sections required reinforcement. Additional analysis was necessary. The report moved through multiple departments: property management, developers, legal teams, insurance representatives. Everyone understood what closure would mean. Financial losses, media attention, public concern. And once again, action was delayed. The day of the collapse began like any other. Residents left for work. Businesses opened their doors. Maintenance crews followed normal schedules. Nothing appeared unusual. Then witnesses reported hearing loud, cracking sounds. At first, people assumed it was construction noise. The sounds continued. Minutes later, sections of the structure began failing. Concrete fractured, support systems gave way, and within moments, part of the skyscraper collapsed. Dust filled the streets. Emergency calls flooded dispatch centers. The city suddenly found itself facing one of the worst building disasters in its history. 23 people died. Dozens more were injured. Rescue operations continued for days. Emergency teams searched through mountains of concrete and steel. Families waited for answers. The public wanted to know how a modern skyscraper could fail so catastrophically. Officials promised a full investigation. Engineers arrived from across the country. Every document connected to the project was collected. Construction records, inspection reports, engineering reviews, and almost immediately investigators noticed something unusual. Several important documents were missing. The investigation began with the collapse, but it quickly shifted toward the building's origins. Inspectors reviewed foundation records. Geologists examined soil reports. Structural engineers analyzed design calculations. The deeper they looked, the stranger the case became. References appeared everywhere. Emails mentioned concerns. Meeting notes discussed warnings. Review documents referenced recommendations. Yet several critical reports could not be located. The missing documents all shared one thing in common. They involved the foundation. Months into the investigation, an archivist made an unexpected discovery. Inside an old storage facility sat dozens of unopened project boxes. Most contained routine paperwork, invoices, permits, construction schedules, but one box carried a reference number connected directly to the skyscraper project. Inside, investigators found the document they had been searching for. The original foundation report. Not a copy, not a summary, the original report, and what it revealed changed everything. When investigators compared the original report with the approved version, the pattern became impossible to ignore. The original document described significant foundation concerns. The approved version described manageable construction challenges. Entire paragraphs were missing. Technical conclusions had been rewritten. Recommendations had disappeared. Risk assessments had been softened. No one knew exactly when the changes occurred, but someone had altered the report before final approval was granted. The discovery transformed the investigation. This was no longer simply a structural failure. It was an information case. Who changed the report? Who approved the edits? And who benefited from keeping construction on schedule? Investigators interviewed former engineers, project managers, and city officials. Some claimed they had never seen the original report. Others insisted the concerns were minor. A few refused to discuss the matter entirely, but internal correspondence told a different story. Emails revealed growing pressure to keep construction moving. Deadlines mattered. Investors expected results. Delays threatened millions of dollars. One message stood out: the project cannot afford another review. Years later, investigators would point to that sentence as one of the most revealing discoveries in the entire case. The deeper investigators looked, the clearer the timeline became. The warning existed, the data existed, the concerns existed, yet every opportunity to stop and reassess the project was postponed. One recommendation delayed, one review canceled, one report rewritten, one warning ignored. Each decision appeared small at the time. Together they created the conditions for catastrophe. Investigators eventually concluded that no single mistake caused the collapse. It was the accumulation of decisions, a chain of compromises stretching back years before the building ever opened. The final engineering review reached a disturbing conclusion. The collapse did not begin on the day the structure failed. It began during construction. The foundation had never fully matched the assumptions used in the design calculations. Additional testing should have occurred. Additional reviews should have occurred. Additional safeguards should have been implemented. The original report had identified many of these concerns years earlier. Not every detail, not every outcome, but enough to change the future of the project. Had the recommendations been followed, investigators believe the risks could have been significantly reduced. Families of the victims spent years searching for answers. Court cases followed. Independent reviews followed. Public hearings followed. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Could this have been prevented? The investigation could not answer every question, but it answered the most important one. The danger was not hidden. The warning was not unknown. The information existed long before the collapse. The opportunity to act existed as well, and that made the findings even harder to accept. Today, the original foundation report remains one of the most important documents connected to the case, not because it predicted the future, not because it contained a shocking secret, but because it proved something investigators already feared. The warning existed, the evidence existed, the questions existed, long before 23 people lost their lives. The report survived, the archive survived, the signatures survived. And together they revealed a truth more disturbing than any conspiracy. Most disasters do not begin with a collapse. They begin with a warning. A warning that seems inconvenient. A warning that can wait until tomorrow. A warning that someone assumes another person will handle. And years later, investigators open a forgotten file and discover the disaster did not begin when the building fell. It began when someone chose not to listen. Case file closed.